What did you do before you flew for Cnac?
I was in the military, the U.S. military, in the Air Force. It was the Army Air Corps then, and I put in 8 years there, before, during, and after World War II.
And why did you join Cnac?
Well, I needed a job. I was in the Air Force in Shanghai, excuse me, and well, Cnac had some jobs to offer, and they hired me and several other people who were based in Shanghai, and we were able to get released from the military there, and went to work for them. That was in 1947.
Was it adventure that attracted you to Cnac, or just money?
A little of both, I think. The pay was good for those days, and adventure, seeing places that I would never probably have the opportunity to see any other way, and I enjoyed it.
I mean, the company was partially owned by Pan Am, but it was basically a Chinese airline.
Yes, it was.
What was that like, really working for the Chinese?
Well, just like working for anybody else. Now, our immediate supervisors were Americans. The top executives were Chinese, but someone like me had very little contact with those people. And now a lot of the pilots were Chinese. All of the co-pilots and radio operators were Chinese, and a lot of captains were Chinese.
Was there a lot of camaraderie?
Oh, sure. We got along fine.
Do you have any kind of anecdotes or stories about your time in the cockpit with, that would be quite exceptional and wouldn't happen anywhere else, really?
Well, I don't know. I tell you, I did have one experience while I was there that I was hijacked. This was in 1949, January 49. I was on a flight from Shanghai to Tsingtao, and a group of Chinese people, they were government employees, decided that they wanted to, as near as I could ever figure out, they just decided that they wanted to change sides in the war that was going on over there at that time. And this is the way that they picked to do it. And they bought a ticket for, there was, I think there was four men, and then one of them had his wife and baby with him. And they bought tickets, and after we got started on our way, we had 8 other passengers on board, and we had no flight attendant. And the excuse me, the co-pilot and radio operator went into the back to hand out box lunches and just see how everything was going. And when they did, these people had guns, and they took them back. And then one guy come up into the cockpit, and he started talking to me, and which this was not unusual for some, nobody locked the cockpit door in those days, and said he wasn't feeling very good, and so wanted to know if it was all right if he sat down in the co-pilot's seat until the co-pilot got back, and I said, yeah, it was all right. So he did, and then I don't know why, I don't remember if there was anything specific, but I looked around, and there was another guy standing there, and he had a big gun, a handgun, I think a .45 revolver, and he had it pointed at me, and he told me, don't touch anything, and to stand up and follow him into the cabin. So I did. And they made me sit down in a seat up fairly well toward the front and fasten my seatbelt. And they had the co-pilot and radio operator back at the back, and they had most of the passengers back fairly well towards the back also. And one guy stood over me with a gun, and this one who had brought me back there, he was the one in charge of all this. And he went back into the cockpit, and this man who had come up first, he was supposedly a pilot, and he was going to fly, and which he did. It was on autopilot when they did all this. And so then this man who was in charge came back pretty soon and sat down beside me, and he had a map, and he showed me we were going to go to Cnac. Well, I tried to get him to let me go up and fly the airplane. I told him I'll take him wherever he wants to go. And no, they wouldn't do that. And so after a little while, I don't know, maybe a half hour or a little more, while we made a turn and headed. Cnac is a couple hundred miles west of Tsingtao, and headed in that direction. We got overhead, they circled around for a little while, and then he came down to land, but he almost wrecked the airplane because he didn't know what he was doing. And he even scared their people. He scared me a lot, and he scared their people too. And so he got it back up. He was right down almost on the ground and made a pretty steep bank and almost dug a wingtip into the ground. Anyhow, he pulled back up a little ways. So this guy, the leader of the group, he came back, and I was hollering and yelling pretty loud, and he just ignored me. But he went back and got my co-pilot and took him up there and had him get into the seat, and and he did a good job, and he brought the airplane around and landed it. So they took us, well,
I mean, did that happen a lot, like nationalists going over to the other side and all these hijackings?
well, that was the only hijacking that I know of while I was there.
Okay.
Or at any time. This was, in fact, as far as I know, the first time ever that anyone hijacked an airplane. And it got to be pretty popular a few years later, but they took us and put us in a hotel. They questioned us a little bit, but the people there, quite obviously, didn't know, were not expecting them. It was something they did, as far as I could ever tell, something they did on their own.